Well, hey there, my name is Luke, and you're listening to the Good Folks Doing Good Work podcast, a podcast where I get to interview folks all throughout the coffee supply circle about the good they're trying to bring into the world and hopefully remind you to keep bringing good things into this world in your context. So let's get into this week's podcast. Well, today we are joined by Andros Mitri, who's the co-founder and general manager of Cima Cafe, especially green coffee import-export company. Before building Cima Cafe, Andros graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in industrial and operations engineering. He spent nearly a decade in operations and strategic sourcing with global companies like Target and H.B. Fuller. With his background, a passion for environmental sustainability and humanitarianism, he seeks to make a positive impact on the environment and the communities that grow coffee that have historically been marginalized. As a native Honduran, Andros uses his strategic mindset, his desire to do good in coffee and leave a positive impact on our earth through Cima Cafe. Hailing from Viroqua, Wisconsin, but coming to you from Honduras today, welcome to the Good Folks podcast, Andros.
Thank you so much, Luke. That's a lovely intro. It's a pleasure to be here with you and be able to share a little bit from Honduras.
So, do you remember the first time you smelled flowering coffee trees?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was in the mountain of Santa Barbara. I was actually at a experimental facility from the cafe, and it was in harvest. And it was a really, really interesting moment because actually there was a tree that had ripe cherries, green beans, green cherries, and then also flowers. So that was literally the first flower that I ever smelt. Not too long after that, though, I really had a special moment with flowers. I visited a producer that I'm still working with to this day, 8 years later. And I remember he invited us out to dinner at his house. And late in the night, he was like, "Hey, Andros, come with me real quick." And we go and we walk like through some bushes, and then boom, it was a field of coffee, small little plantation. And it was just all white flowers in the middle of the night. And I just vividly remember that because that's when I was like, oh man, this is like, it's like stars, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, those were my first experiences with flowers.
Unreal. First of all, who was the producer that walked you through the forest at night? What was their name that you're still working with today?
Yeah, Celín Recinos. He's from La Labor Ocotepeque, Finca La Guadalupe. It's a 40-hectare farm that is his and his sister's. It used to be their dad's. And so he manages all the plantation for him and his family and does all the processing on that coffee. And he was actually one of the first producers that I started working with a while back. And
wow,
it's been such a pleasure. Yeah. He's family now.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I'm sure you are to him as well. So that's very cool. You also said that the first time you saw and smelled coffee flowers, it was an experimental plot. What do you remember what was experimental about it?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a crazy experiment. It was actually, so when I first started in coffee, I knew almost nothing about coffee except drinking it and just about that. And so my first 4 months when I came down here to Honduras, I was literally just spending time. I lived on coffee farms for about 2 months, and then I spent the rest of the time literally traveling, visiting different farms around the country, learning about the seed all the way to, how you cup the coffee, learning from pickers all the way to cuppers and baristas, and really just learning what that industry looked like, what it all was. And so as part of that, I went to, it's called Los Linderos, and it's in Santa Barbara, and it's one of the ICAFE's research centers. And so there they have all the varieties where they pick out the seeds to, then distribute across the country. And then their experimental plots are where they're, testing out new varieties that they are trying to stabilize and test how they interact in Honduran terroir or microclimate, and decide whether they're going to release it or not. So it was a cool experience because I definitely got to learn from Arnold Pineda, who is an eminence in terms of coffee research. He's written multiple books in terms of the physiology of the coffee plants and participated in international research. And so, yeah, part of Honduras's hidden gems deep in the mountains.
Yeah, what a cool experience! What both of those experiences are pretty memorable and pretty powerful.
Totally. Yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah, it's very cool. Hey, really quickly, I have 3 things I want to share with you. Number 1, I run a consulting firm called Pomelo Coffee Consulting, and we only work with coffee roasters, and we help them with 3 things: their people, their processes, and their profit. Now, within Pomelo, I also run a cohort called Junto. There's 2 of them. One's for owners of coffee roasteries. The other one is exclusively for leaders within coffee roasteries, and both of them are structured similarly. They both have a peer-to-peer coaching portion. You can add on some one-on-one time with me. There's some learning opportunities. But man, I gotta tell you, it has been incredible to see what is possible when a group of leaders get in a virtual room together and are sharing challenges, have some learning opportunities, share the things that they're learning, share resources. It's very, very cool. And so if this sounds interesting to you, you can find out more in the show notes, or you can go to pomelocoffeeconsulting.com, and there's a whole tab there for Junto, both of those groups. Now, lastly, I'm releasing a book. It's slated to be released towards the end of the summer, early fall, and it's on the framework that I use when I work with clients. So if you want to be one of the first to receive that book, head over to my website. There's a tab for the book, and you can pre-order a book now. Back to the episode. So I have to imagine that your background in sourcing for large brands like Target and H.B. Fuller have influenced how you plan, source, and manage your own business. Where have you seen your background be a superpower in your work today?
Yeah, I mean, very different ways that it has impacted, and it has totally impacted. Just off the top of my head, yes, I was in sourcing. So my job was literally to buy and spend hundreds of millions of dollars for massive companies. And so they spent money training me on, negotiations and sourcing and this kind of stuff. And I'll never forget, one of the biggest impacts was let's talk about the range of negotiation styles, and what you can achieve with that. On one end of the spectrum is highly transactional. It's the shell salesman at the beach, walking around, just trying to get you to buy something, right, for whatever price in that moment. And then on the other end of that spectrum is cooperation and partnership and really building a mutually beneficial long-term relationship where you can create more value than you could independently. And so just from that, it was highly clear to me, okay, I need to really bring in these highly strategic partnership, collaborative oriented negotiation style, if what my goal is to build these long-term relationships. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I had a whole toolbox of frameworks and tools just to bring clarity to those conversations and to be able to structure things in a way where you can get the results that you want. Because one thing is having the intention of things, going super well and working long term with someone. But I mean, relationships, it's like dating, it's like any relationship. Right. It's ups and downs, and you get to meet people the more dates you go on and all this stuff. So how can we be very intentional and strategic as we go through that so that communication's great and at the end of the day, we both want to keep working together,
I think the picture of it's like dating somebody is perfect, because it really is. When you start working with somebody, you meet them and maybe you have a previous conceived notion of how they function or how their business is structured. And then you start to see what you leave dishes out in the sink, and you don't make your bed every day. And also, why didn't you pay your last invoice on time? Are you going to always not pay your invoice? I think the dating illustration's perfect for that. So I'm assuming that you have taken the latter approach to building mutually beneficial relationships. Have you found yourself in a position where you've had to demonstrate your intentions during negotiation and it not working out?
Man, yes. In short, yes. I mean, coffee is super complicated. At the end of the day, like, we're people. We're people. We're not all perfect. And we all come with our own baggage and history and stories and needs, and so without like criticizing or like trying to like say that something's bad or like wrong. Yeah, man, I've had tough experiences, let's say, where I've gotten stood up at a date or something like that.
Totally.
And it's tough because, yeah, 100%, like, we're very, very clear with what we're trying to achieve. Sustainable, like high quality, that the farmers don't have to be depending on the sea market for like if they can, get paid well or not, but like that every year you can count on, having a market for your coffee at a good price, and that they get to be in relationship with those people that are roasting and working with their coffees, and I'll tell you, that's every producer's dream. At least here, like when you talk to them, like that's what they want. They want to be in connection with the people that are working with their coffee. They want to know where it goes. They want to be paid fairly for their work, and they want to do something that they're proud of at the end of the day. And so I think that's where like the quality piece really fits in well, because that's what people want to do. They don't want to do a crappy job. They want to do something nice. And they put a lot of love and effort into it. So yeah, but totally. I mean, 2 years ago, very specific, I'll tell you a story. Like I had a producer that I had been working with for 3 years. We had gotten his volume up from like 50 bags to like a full container of his coffee. It was really amazing. And then, the third year we were going to work together, the price of the sea market was high, and in Honduras, you also have the phenomenon of coffee smuggling in certain border regions. Like, for example, with Guatemala, people will come in to Honduras and then offer even higher prices than the market in Guatemala because they don't have to pay the export fees here and things like that. And so in this case, like, yeah, a producer that I had been working with for 2 years, we were about to buy another container from him. He just decided to take the money and that's it, And yeah, it was like super short-sighted because like I stopped buying coffee from him, and I know that producer's story, and like what's happened to him since, and it hurts, because, and I'm not saying that it's because of me, but I'm like, his decisions have left him in like a situation where, it's not good. It's not where he should be or could be right now, if we would have kept working together. And then I see other producers that, have delivered, and like, yes, there's been market swings that like make the differences that we might be able to pay are like not as great, when the market's super high, even though we're always above the market and we're always paying more for quality. It's different when the market's at 450, what we can offer and still be competitive, with our roasters to be able to support their work, versus when the market's $2, and 100%. We're like double that, because of the relationships that we have. Yeah. But, what can you do? And
nothing.
Really our thing has been like focusing in with like the people that do want to work with us. I can't force anybody. It takes a lot of effort also on the part of the producer to be able to produce high quality coffee. So they really have to want to do that. And it's not for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. And I wish everyone well. Like if they find a different way to like achieve their goals, like that is amazing. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, to your point. And the reason why I asked that is because it's just a common thing. And I think it's important for us as owners of businesses that when we're working with folks to not lose sight of those intentions and not lose sight of the desire to do good, and to not let those negative experiences when you bought their coffee, you increased their volume year after year, and when you were about to buy 2 containers, they're gone. And so it's I think it's important to share those things because we face those challenges every day in different ways, and it's important for us as owners to remind ourselves that don't lose your faith in humanity and the people next to you, because there's still folks that are doing good work that are going to sell you 2 containers and it's going to be great, and you start a new relationship.
Totally. And let me tell you what happened on the back end of that. When that happened, we were able to approach, it was a huge struggle, but we miraculously like found a couple people that had some coffee available. It wasn't as good as the coffee we had been buying from this other person, but it was good enough that it would like help our roaster partners like make it through. And we talked to them, and we were super transparent, this coffee's not there anymore, and like this is what we're working on, and they stood by us too, you know, and like they were like, okay, we'll do this, and we'll work with this coffee, and you know, we made it work, and everyone, you know, was able to get where they needed. We found some new relationships, and then the year after, so actually this last year, instead of buying two containers from this one farmer, you know, that we would have bought it again this year, like now we bought like, you know, half containers from 5 farms, or not five
Right.
farms, but 5 farming groups. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're actually working on growing twice the amount of, you know, those kinds of coffees that are like high quality blenders across the country with different profiles, with kind of like slightly different quality ranges. And so really to be able to offer our clients even like higher transparency, you know, more options, and like, yeah, good coffees.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that story, because that's what we need to hear, is that when the sky feels like it's falling and it feels like all of your work is not worthwhile, there's a silver lining of now you have new relationships. And it's very cool that your roasting partners that were purchasing these coffees were open to shifting. And that speaks to what we were just speaking of in terms of building a long-term lasting relationship where everybody wins.
Yeah, totally. And it's great because, like, I remember those things. Those people supported us and they stood by us when, like, we failed. And it made me feel a higher degree of commitment, you know, to really,
100%.
like, do a better job for them, you know, and I feel like we
Yeah.
really did that.
Yeah.
And everybody that worked with that replacement coffee before has their own perfectly selected that they liked more than, you know, the other options of these
Of course.
blenders, of this
Yeah.
blenders.
Thanks for sharing that. I read somewhere that during your time as an analyst, you were able to save nearly $2 million. It was either a client or for your department. What did you implement or discover that allowed you to make this significant impact?
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I saved a lot more than $2 million for big corporations. But, you know, at the end of the day, what it really boiled down to was kind of approaching things with the right perspective and like this whole relationship mindset. You know, my approach was always more towards collaboration, even when I was working for these companies. And I feel like that's really where you can unlock value. Not by like, you
Absolutely.
know, squeezing your supplier. No, but just by unlocking value, finding the inefficiencies, getting rid of the waste, you know, and making things easier and more cost effective for everybody involved. And so, yeah, it was kind of that's what it was. And when I started Cima, that was the mentality, and that's exactly what it's been, and it's how I decided to get into coffee. In those 4 months that I was, you know, traveling and really getting to know about coffee and learning, there was one moment in particular that really like it was like that was it. It was I was sitting with some pickers at their farm at 800 meters in Santa Barbara. It was just about a hectare, maybe a little bit less. You know, they had Catimora varietals. Yeah. And they were producing coffee, selling it to the local intermediary that they'd been selling to their whole life, that would also, you know, give them money to buy the fertilizers before the harvest, and that then would be like discounting their coffee for moisture defects or whatever they made up whenever they were delivering the coffee. And so I was sitting with them one night at their farm, and we did like a P&L, a profit and loss on their farm, you know, and they'd never done that before, but we did that with them. And by doing that, like we got to the conclusion, like they were losing like 20% of what they'd put into the farm every year. And their answer, you know, was, yeah, but I mean, I grow my corn and I grow my beans on this plot, and that corn and those beans feed my family for the entire year. That moment just hit me in terms of saying, okay, this is not working. There is so much waste in terms of the interest that they're paying, the value that they're not capturing for their coffee, the fact that there's probably 200 steps between that farm and the final consumer of that coffee. And, you know, that they were in a situation where like maybe coffee wasn't the right crop for them to grow, but because they owed money to this like hamster wheel that they were on, like, you know, it's just there's no way out. And that's really when we came to I came to the conclusion there has to be a better way of doing this. And then we started looking into it and exploring and having the conversations of like, okay, how do we cut out the waste? How do we, make this more streamlined? How do we really make a space for ourselves, not by like extracting, which is the traditional model in coffee.
Right.
It's like so extractive.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like, how
Yeah.
can we do it by actually building and giving back and like ending up with more value at the producer and for the roaster too,
Yeah.
and not just in terms of price for the roaster, because I think especially if you look at a year like this year, coffee is just expensive, man. And so if you can count on having really good coffee, that's, I think, really powerful as a roaster, to have like a secure supply that you can just know you're going to get what you need from the people that you've been working with for a long time, and that you can keep counting on that coffee for years to come. Right. And yeah, really what we've seen is like the only way of doing that is through these relationships, like really, because then you secure a market for that farmer, so then they know what they're working for. They know that if they do their job the way it needs to happen, there's someone at the other side that's willing to recognize that.
Thank you for sharing that story and how you got into it. There's 3 things I want to talk about. I want to talk about working for a corporation. I want to talk about building out a P&L for farmers. And I also want to talk about collaboration. Let's start with the corporations bit, because speaking from a Western perspective, the tendency is to be like, corporations are bad. I can't believe you would ever work for one. How dare you? But the reality is you learned how to actually make an impact in the lives of producers through learning what does collaboration look like. How do we make sure that each stakeholder benefits from how we're working? So I want to acknowledge that and thank you for being open about that and being open about your background and your experience.
Totally.
The last thing I want to ask is, or chat about, is the P&L for producers. With the producers that you've worked for, how many of them have built out a P&L or have some type of a structure for, these are my inputs, this is what I'm left with at the end of the year, this is how much I'm making? Just so our listeners understand what
Totally.
producers go through.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the P&L bit.
Awesome. In our case now, I'd say it's about 85% of our producers are like working like that.
It's great.
They're business people, and not because they've been business people, but because it behooves them to be business people. They run a business. They spend money and they need to sell it, to make up their costs, and their goal is a profit. It's not revenue, it's a profit.
Right.
And that's also part of like what we've been talking about with producers. In Honduras, there's a lot of different nuances. Like there's a huge push from the government and everyone just to produce volume. Everyone's pushing you to produce more. But I'll be super clear. What I've told producers is that if we try to compete on volume with Brazil, we're going to lose. We're going to lose today and we're going to lose
Every
tomorrow.
time.
Every time. I mean, literally, Brazil's costs through technification are just going to get lower and lower and lower. Honduras is all manually harvested. Our mountains are almost 90 degrees vertical. So, you can't put a harvest picker up on there. And like, I've seen drones or other things like this. And like, it gets very expensive. And
yeah,
we're going to have to rely on manual labor if we want to pick our coffees, at least, in some part into the future. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, our costs aren't going to go down. They're going to go up. Brazil's are, have the potential to go down. Like the only way we can keep producing coffee is if we start producing higher qualities. And if we start really adding value to our coffees to differentiate them in some way. And when we look at that mentality, then you're not talking about producing more. You're talking about producing the best that you can or maximizing your profit. And then that can really look different for every producer. For example, like I have one producer, Victor Contreras, that we've been working with now 4 years, where that was kind of his impetus to switch from like conventional farming to organic farming 15 years ago now, was basically he got to a point where he was fed up with buying a ton of money in fertilizers, and he grabbed his fertilizers that he had just bought and just went and dropped them off back at the store. Like, he didn't even get money for them. He just said, screw it, I don't need this. And then he started switching to organic production. This whole thing is like, okay, if sure, I produce a little bit less per hectare, but I'm basically not spending any money,
on
putting
fertilizer
into the
inputs.
farm. Totally.
Yeah.
And, he's a genius in his own way. Like, his farm is biodynamic. He's preparing rock soups to be those fertilizers to put the right nutrients into the ground. And so, it's just switching the mentality and how you do things a little bit from, I need to produce a ton of coffee and that's what's going to save me, to no, actually you need to be profitable so that you can invest in yourself, so you can invest in your family, so you can invest in your future and in your kids.
Man, so good.
Yeah. Luckily, that's where we're at. And there's still like, a couple farmers that need a little bit more coaching, and a couple farmers that we just started working with last year that we work with all kinds of farmers. We work with farmers that, like Celine, his dad had 40 hectares, so he's been producing a lot of coffee for a while. They have, not that they're like wealthy or anything, but, they have a little bit more infrastructure than maybe these other farmers that I was just talking about, where, they've been constantly just on a hamster wheel and just like kind of wanting to discover, a different way of doing things. And so we work with a range of people and just meet the farmers where they're at. And, sometimes it's very hard to start with a P&L when the numbers look really, really bad,
Or they're just scary and they don't want to look at them, or maybe they don't even have them. It's interesting because what you're describing is so similar to what I see with roasters. So often they don't have a priority that I need to make a profit. They're not focused on that oftentimes. And the shift is, or the thought to what you're saying is, well, if I sell more coffee, I'll just make more money. But there's constraints to that. And it's, from a farm perspective, it's how much land do you have and how much of it is good for growing coffee. But for a roaster, it's like, well, how much can I roast in a day on the roaster that I have? And then also, how much time do I need to spend out selling the coffee? So if I sell more, I'll make more, right? No, you have to get to profit first so that you can do it. You actually can sell less coffee if you're more profitable.
Yeah.
And pay yourself the same amount of money, which is a hard mindset to shift.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also like the similarity in terms of like the labor piece of it, right? Because like if you're roasting more coffee, you're spending more on labor. It's the same thing here. If you have more coffee planted and you want to pick more coffee, I mean, someone's hands need to go out there and pick those cherries, and so that's another investment. Yeah. And bigger isn't always better for sure.
No, it's not. I'm also not against growth, but it doesn't. You have to make sure that you're making money with what you have currently before we get to add more.
Totally. It needs to make sense, and be intentional for sure. It's not the answer. It's probably the answer to more problems,
As you were speaking, I was just thinking, it seems reductionistic to speak of the work that you're doing as just import export, because it sounds like you're offering different support, more holistic support to the producers that you are working with. Would that be incorrect to say that?
Oh, no, that's absolutely. Those labels are very constrictive or very restrictive, but at the same time, they're like, it's what people are used to hearing, right? Totally what we do goes far beyond that. I mean, I personally spend like 4 months out of the year in Honduras. I'm in Honduras right now, basically getting feedback on like the last season and how everything went with each farmer that we work with, receiving that from them, sharing the feedback that we've gotten from the roasters that we work with or what we've seen, and also like kind of planning things out for next season, And it's like, there's no coffee coming out right now. There's no coffee to taste here. But if I feel that the work that we're doing right now, like the relationship, is what ends up providing me the coffee, whenever it's ready. And it also like gives the producers that I work with the security that like, hey, this is what we're working on. This is the direction that we need to go. And it gives them enough time to start planning on how to get there too, you know? So, I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way. It's incredible. And it's also, I think, like part of the difference that we are able to provide is like we're there with a producer like as much as we can be to support them to achieve our collective goals. You know, it's like during the season, as soon as they have their first coffees, we're starting a cup day lots for them, you know, and like that, giving feedback and, you know, just anything that we can do in terms of making that flow better for all parties involved. I think we all win. You know, the roasters win,
100%.
producers win, and then we're able to keep growing our business.
You mentioned feedback is something that you're giving at this moment, but I also heard in one of your videos that coffees that you are selling to roasters are tasted at least 7 times before they actually land in a roastery, or at a roastery stock rather. Is that true?
Yeah, totally. At least.
Really? Okay. Walk me through that. Why so many, or is that just normal?
I mean, for us, it is kind of normal. Like, let's say a certain coffee, whatever. Okay, we'll cup it. We'll cup the first beans of that lot. And so we start with that at the very beginning of the season and really kind of get the preview for what's coming, you know? And from there, also be able to give initial feedback typically. And like what a lot of producers have already, we've started designing is like experiments, like, you know, those like few little seeds that you get at the beginning. That's our best shot to like try out the new things at 20 pounds of cherry, which is like, you know, basically you can get a small sample from that, to just try and learn and experiment and innovate and clean up our processes and figure some things out. And so like those are typically like the first cuppings that we do. Then we're like cupping the lots. Once we start putting them together during the season, we'll, you know, also receive guests, roasters that come down and visit us, or sometimes we go and put on events. And typically like every coffee is going to get cupped again there. Then, you know, once we actually receive the coffee at the warehouse, it gets cupped pre-mill here in Honduras. During milling, it gets cupped again. And then finally pre-ship, it gets cupped, and then arrival. So, you know, we're doing the best we can to control the quality. And I'm not saying that it's perfect. It's not always 100%. You know, we have issues sometimes.
It never will be. Yeah, of
And,
course.
you know, but that's why at least if we're able to have all these little snapshots of where it was, then we can look back and have a little bit more detail about what happened,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and at what point did this shift? And that kind of gives us more visibility into, okay, so what should we try next year to like have that not be the case, you know? And the thing is that it's not just a general rule that you can just say, oh, do this, and this is what you need. It's really, you know, you have to take into consideration the producer, the environment that they're in, their resources and abilities, their knowledge. I mean, all of these factors really determine what's going to happen, you know? Because it's totally different going to like Cup of Excellence winning producer and being, you know, oh, you can do some maybe more advanced things versus, you know, a producer that has never produced a micro lot. And, you know, maybe with them, it's just like, hey, how about doing some trials like washed honey natural so that you can, with how it performs in these different processes, or,
Right.
you know, like put it in a bag for 24 hours in cherry, or, hey, how about really try just to cup, like, let's try to just do really, really ripe cherries versus your normal picking and see what
Sure.
happens. You know, it can be super simple, you know,
Right.
and anything in between. So, yeah. But the
It's very
idea is like,
interesting.
okay, get an experience and then figure that out, what that means to you for yourself, you know?
Yeah. And those checks of tasting so many times before it lands, that information as a coffee grower, I'm sure is incredibly valuable to help see how is it actually changing from the first, you know, cherry you pick to the end of harvest, and what's happened in between there. Have we changed anything? That information, I'm sure, is so valuable to producers to help increase the quality, which the goal then is to increase how much money they're left with at the end of the year, which is super, super valuable.
Totally. Yeah. 100%.
Every origin has unique challenges and things that make it beautiful and interesting and special. And you had mentioned earlier about coffee smuggling as a challenge that is unique to Honduras. What do you find that you're continually having to educate roasters on about Honduras specifically that maybe folks don't know that happens in Honduras?
Plain and simple, we look at the majority of roasters, and this is slightly changing now, because there's been some people that have been doing things differently, and that's helped. But the majority of roasters look at Honduran coffee as commercial grade. It's like the blender, it's the volume, it's the coffee that, is whatever just to fill with. And so like I do feel like, it's changing, but like there is a big impression that there isn't quality in Honduras, or maybe that the only quality that exists is in the mountain of Santa Barbara, And really, we work across the country. We work all over. And there's amazing coffees all over. There's such a diversity of profiles, of producers, of landscapes, of like climates. It's crazy. You can't just reduce it to one thing. And so, yeah, for me, it's like, there's just such diversity in profiles. There's such diversity here. There's so much quality. There's hyper innovation happening, especially with like the younger generation. Like they're hungry, they're smart, they're on Chat GPT, they're asking questions, and they're getting after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're continuously having to share with roasters that it's not just your blender coffee that's just fine, and the younger generation's bringing the heat, bringing the innovation.
Totally. Yeah. And maybe, maybe I don't have to share that as much with like the roasters that I work with, because again, like
Sure.
I really appreciate who they are. And like, when we go out and we think about who we want to work with, it's like, it's kind of the same thing that we do with our farmers, and it's like, we want the same thing with our roasters partners, because I don't just want to sell coffee. I want to make a relationship for a farmer.
Of course.
So I need to work with someone that's going to be down for that. And that's just not everybody, right?
We're kind of poking at the first conversations that you have with maybe a new relationship, a coffee buyer, a roaster who's going to buy from you. I speak with green coffee importers and folks on the green side of things all the time. And one of my favorite questions to ask them is, what do you wish roasters communicated to you?
A lot of them really do a great job of doing this. And especially like the more we work together, the more we're able to do this. But it's really just communicate your needs and be super transparent. My goal is to get you that. If you tell me clearly I need a coffee in this price range and I need this much for the year and it needs to be this quality and this profile, then you know what? And beyond that, like assuming that what you are looking for is, long-term relationship or to actually support, and that, all that configuration is something that would also make sense for the producer. But then that information is something that I can go and take and be like, hey, farmers that, we work with, is this something that interests you? Or is this what you want? Or, you know what? I think this might be a really good relationship for you guys long term. Like, how about it? So yeah, for us, it starts there. Really understanding what our roaster partners need is like the key. And I know that's hard, and you probably see it, a lot in the work that you do for a small roastery. To be able to tell you all that is
totally,
it's a lot easier said than done.
Right. That's the thing, is like a lot of times their intentions aren't to be concealing anything. A lot of times their intentions are just, I didn't think to share that with you. I didn't know that was important. And then you get into the conversation a little deeper. You're like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? I could have helped you. I could have saved you money and supported you. But yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And especially for roasters, it doesn't come from a place of trying to be secretive. It comes from a place of not realizing that, if I share this information, it can actually help you help me.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. And yeah, like, especially like, because there are costs, and like the way we, like, let's say our pricing is based on like, you're buying a bag, right? Or like a bag or two. And like with our pricing, we're able to like recover the costs to be able to do that, right? But like, really for roasters, if you're able to like share what you need, then like that unlocks a whole bunch of levers, you know, and like the
Totally.
more they share, the more we share, and then the more we can like kind of like customize something
Right.
as well
Right.
from a business perspective.
Right.
It can be a deal that's like mutually beneficial for everybody involved. The farmer sells his coffee at the price that he wanted. Roaster like has a deal that works out for them and that they're able to float. And like for us, like, you know, we get to make it happen and hopefully sustain that for another year or longer for sure.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned customization and sharing the information that would be helpful, but who could customize? You know, obviously, if you're buying one bag, the bags you're going to get the bag you get that's on offer. But how much volume does a roaster have to go through in order for it to make sense to start to customize and start to build something special for your roaster? How many bags do they need to buy or containers do they need to purchase before that makes sense for you?
Two things there. One is I actually secretly, not so secretly, I love working with small roasters. You know,
They're
I
great.
love it.
They're
They're
awesome.
so passionate and, you know, they're like really just like doing it with what they got. And like,
Yeah,
they're usually more hungry and like just after it, you know, and
totally.
I just really love that. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. Like we're here to help, you know, and really like support those kinds of works. That kind of work. And like, I'll tell you, I have multiple roasters that I work with that they started buying less than a full bag. Now they're flying through coffee, you know? So yeah, we're totally down for that process. We want to grow together with our partners on both sides. That's the idea is like, how do we raise the tide of people that are doing a good job and that, you know, are giving back and, you know, creating this like ecosystem that lifts us all up. So yeah, I would say don't be shy. Like, you know, reach out. We're happy to help. And then obviously the more volume you're doing, well, then the more levers there are to pull on.
When we say small roasters in quotations, some folks that are going through a bag are would consider themselves small, and some folks that are going through 20 or 30 at a time would consider them small because the roaster up the street's going through a couple containers at a time. And so I want to make it practical for folks. Like, should they just put the onus on you to say, hey, I want to do something interesting, or I want to deepen our relationship where we've gone on a few dates. Should we start to develop this relationship a little deeper?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's different levels of that, and like we're also in the process of like upping our game. So like this is a real preview of something that's going to be coming out in the not too distant
Cool.
future. But we're going to be launching like an online store,
Very
very
cool.
much looking at like small bag, you know, like less than a bag, split bags, 30 kg, one bag type deal, exactly for this, to be able to service those smaller roasters, like not at that customization level, but like, hey, you liked this coffee and you want to buy it, like you can just click a couple buttons and like it's yours and probably delivered to your door. So that's something that we're working on. So we're in the process of reimagining how we're engaging with our partners, with our roaster partners, and really shifting a little bit and becoming more of a platform, a service, you know, provider. And this marketplace becomes a place where like every producer will have their own page with information that they're providing us, that we're translating and building them out a website basically where, you know, is their story, their pictures that they're providing us with, and then also like listing their coffees that we purchase from them. And so that you can go in there and you can interact with that in whatever way, whether that is like understanding more information about the coffees and the processes themselves, looking at the variety of what that producer's like producing in terms of different coffees, or actually going through and like ordering a coffee, you know, at smaller quantities for sure, like less than a bag, maybe like a bag or two. And then, you know, once it's a little bit more of like, you know, you're doing a little bit more business, or, you know, you really are looking to buy some volume, then, you know, you can always reach out to us and we can find a way to service that in whatever way that looks like. We're not doing that because we want to avoid having conversations. No, it's just we really want to reach people in the best way that we can. And like, we're a small team, you know, and so I know for a lot of roasters, they need speed. And
Right.
you know, if that's more important to you, then like, here's your option. And then if you want more of a different deal or a personal interaction, or you need something that goes beyond what we're able to offer with that automation and speed, then totally reach out and let's talk, because at the end of the day, we want to make relationships happen for the producers and for the roasters. Yeah.
It's rad. It's rad. What's on deck for you? I think that you're doing some touring with somebody kind of important at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're about to head back to the States with Fabio Caballero Jr., who just won Cup of Excellence here in Honduras this year. We've been working with him for 3 years now. Yeah, and we're going to be going to 5 different cities, visiting a whole bunch of roasters and co-roasting spaces around the U.S., hosting events. Really, the goal is give roasters the opportunity to talk to someone that's been working at the highest level of coffee, who is a 4th generation coffee farmer. Fabio Caballero Jr.'s grandpa is also joining us. He was the first Cup of Excellence winner in Honduras. I mean, he's been working with Tim Wendelbo for like 20 years, with Intelligentsia, like, you know, all over the world, the best of the best. And so anytime I'm around Don Fabio Sr., I just shut up and listen, you know, because that man has a lifetime of experience and stories, and is just amazing to be able to witness and, you know, learn 1 or 2 things. Yeah. So we're really, really excited to be able to show them around and like bring them to meet our community in the States.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a fun tour, and what a fun couple of people to be around and to learn from and to listen to and to sit under. It's very, very cool.
Oh man, it's it's a gift for sure.
So as we close, we always ask, what are 1 or 2, maybe 3 books that have been particularly formative for you? Could be professional, could be personal.
Yeah, wow, man, oh man, more than a few, right? But like just off the top of my head, it's like, you know, The Alchemist is a book that I've always gone back to, that inspired me throughout my life and still does, by Paulo Coelho. If I were to think of another one just off the top of my head, the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if you've read that or heard of it.
Familiar.
It's a religious text. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing stuff in terms of, you know, facing challenges and just kind of like doing what you're here to do, and like, you know, those really tough decisions sometimes, but having that internal courage and trust in the universe that somehow, some way, this is what is. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of The 4 Agreements.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say that's also another book that I am constantly going back to, for sure.
Yeah. Very cool.
Sorry, I don't have more coffee books for you. I mean, you know, I've read a lot of the classics and like, you know, the roasting books and the history books and all those. And those are very informative and all great. But coffee is people, really. You know, at the end of the day, it's like people that are harvesting that coffee, and everyone is, you know, a human being, just like you and me and everyone else that we work with. So yeah, I think the other books are far more applicable.
Yeah, well, I think that it's important to have a context for both of the coffee books are important, but the books about life and about changing your mindset and your approach to how you work in the world, those are in some ways almost more important, because we can all make good coffee. The thing that we have to work hard to change is our own approach to business and to life. And that's why I love that none of these books are coffee related.
Yeah.
It's good.
For sure.
Good. It's good. Okay, so let's say I'm a roaster and I want to buy some coffee from you. And let's start with the US. Who do I talk to?
Yeah, I think right now, best thing you can do is to get the quickest replies, go onto our website. There's a contact form, fill it out. I'll get the email myself. And then also like our marketing team, Fernando, who's also our sales and marketing team now, will also get that email. And we will, as a team, get to it as quickly as we can and work with you to get you samples or more information or schedule a call to meet and try to see what we can do together.
Very cool. And then is there any difference if I'm outside of the US, in Europe, or the Middle East?
No, totally. That works as well. If you're in Europe, like send us the contact form of Yaid, who's my business partner and handles business partner, childhood friend, brother. He handles our clients and roaster partners in Europe. And so he'll also get the email and we'll all jump in there to support as best we can. And then, also like feel free to reach out on Instagram. I'd say that works just as well. Again,
sure.
Everyone that needs to see it sees it. We're a super small team. This is not a massive corporation. So, we'll get eyes on it and reach out. If we don't get back right away, please just understand we're humans and we're doing the best we can. And ask us again. But we're doing the best we can to get you prompt replies and hopefully make those connections happen.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate that. And hopefully there'll be some folks that make some contact and taste some delicious coffee that you've been working on for a very, very long time. So Andros, thank you so much for sharing about your perspective, for sharing about your experience working in big corporations and emphasizing to us that collaboration is how real change happens. And thank you for the work that you're doing, and we need it, and I appreciate it, and thank you for being here and sharing like an open book.
No, totally. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the space. And just, to whoever's out there, reach out, meet some Honduran coffee farmers. You will not be disappointed.
I love that. Thank you. As always, be well. Hey, it's Luke, and I'm back one last time with 2 questions. Number 1, did you learn anything from that podcast? Or did you stumble upon a new question or a new thing that maybe you're not sure what the answer is? If either of those 2 are true for you, reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me at pomelocoffeeconsulting.com. And there's a contact tab. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what questions you have, or maybe what question was answered in this podcast. As always, be well.